What's going on, everybody? It's your boy BJ, the DJ. You are now tuned into the B side. That's right, this is the B side. And for this episode, I want to go back on what I was talking about with the Forbes top 50 greatest rappers of all time list. Now that I've had time to sit on that list, um, I have had time to evaluate who was on that list and who wasn't on that list. And what I have here is I have a list of 10 rappers who were completely left off of the 50 greatest rappers of all time list presented by Forbes. Now, there were several people on that list that were questionable for various reasons, right? Not just for the fact that as a fan, you want to see people on this list, but there were several names that were on that list that were questionable. And they were also ranked ahead of people who deservingly should have been higher on that list. But when I got to looking at the list directly, I was shocked that I didn't notice that these 10 names were left off this list entirely, right? Because there was definitely room for them to be on there. So let's get to it, right? These are 10 rappers who were left off the Forbes top 50 rappers of all time list, right? And these are in no particular order, but we're going to start off. We're going to talk about Redman. Now, Redman has a very unique style, and if you talk about greatest rappers of all time, Redman's name comes up in conversation. Eminem, for instance, that's his favorite rapper of all time. Redman's work with Method Man is unquestionable, right? So they're one of the greatest duos of all time, but that shouldn't exclude Redman from this top 50 list. There was definitely placement on there for him to be a part of it, right? Redman's catalog is impeccable. Redman's lyricism is incredible, and he is one of those that stands out because of his uniqueness. You would place him in a category with the likes of Busta Rhymes, Method Man, Wu Tang. He was a part of the Def Squad, etc. So I was shocked when I really ran through the list and I noticed that Redman was absent from that list. So I definitely feel like there was room on the top 50 list for Redman, and I think he should have been on there, right? So next up, Jadakiss. I mean, Jadakiss feels like he's top five dead or alive, right? And his work with the Locks again as part of a group is unquestionable, right? But he also has credentials as a solo artist under his belt as well, right? At least two gold albums. He's produced several number one songs, several gold and platinum certified songs. And as far as lyricists go, like if you talk about the Yonkers, New York style of lyricism, Jada is right there at the top, right? Next to Styles P, Chic Luch, and several others. But he is actually held in high regard by most of his peers for being a top tier lyricist. I don't think Jadakiss should have been excluded from that top 50 list at all, but he was. And I was shocked to see that, right? Next up, Ja Rule. Now, say what you want about Ja Rule. Since Ja Rule's feud with 50, he's lost a little bit of credibility in some sense. But there was a time period for 3 or 4 years before 50 dropped that every song on the radio Ja Rule was a part of. So I don't think you can exclude his hit making ability during that 3 to 4 year span. I mean, he headlined tours with Jay Z, DMX, and he held his own, right? So leaving Ja off this list, despite your feelings toward him because of the beef with 50 or whatever, I think is definitely a travesty considering some of the names that were left on that list, right? I think Ja Rule deserved a place on that top 50 list without a doubt. Next up, Game. I'm a huge Game fan, and not just because of the work he did with Dr. Dre. I think after Game left Dre, after the documentary dropped, the Doctor's Advocate album is one of the most slept on albums, not just for West Coast artists, but in hip hop in general. I think Game did a really good job of standing on his own. Regardless, there's not very many features he's gotten on with people where he hasn't absolutely stole the show. I do consider him a top tier lyricist. I know people talk about how he bites lyrics all the time and he name drops all the time. None of that matters when it comes to the fact that he could actually provide you bars and he actually makes really dope songs, right? So, shocked to see Game left off. I do feel like Game was part of the resurrection of the West Coast, and being able to pretty much go anywhere he wants and do songs with whoever he wants. I will completely ignore the fact that he called out Eminem and said he was a better rapper than Eminem. We won't even talk about that because I do feel like Game has an impeccable catalog, and I think he's a top tier lyricist that should have been on this top 50 list, right? But he wasn't. Next up, I got Twister. Twister, for one, was the father of the tongue twisting style. I wouldn't say let me fall back. Maybe he's not the father of the style, but he's the one that really garnered the most attention with the style. And from Twister, we got the likes of Bone Thugs and Harmony and all these others who come out with this tongue twisting style. Um, Twister, I mean, I would easily put him in my top 15 category overall just because of his uniqueness and just because of his ability, right? Huge fan of Twister. I think Adrenaline Rush is one of the dopest songs ever created. I love the album. It is a great storytelling album, really helped put Chicago on the map. And then the follow up to that album, although it took a long time for that follow up to come out, Kamikaze is a very dope album. And you got to see the ability you got to see Twister's ability to produce hit songs and not just be rapidy over fire beats, right? So yeah, Twister being off this list again is absolute travesty. I don't know how they couldn't find a slot in these top 50. I don't see how they couldn't find a slot in the top 50 to put Twister. So him being left off is an absolute travesty. Scarface. Scarface is in a lot of people's top five. Scarface is very respected by his peers. Scarface um, was a part of a group called the Ghetto Boys, and he did his best to stand out. Right when Scarface started dropping solo albums, his catalog is another one. It's impeccable, right? And what it did for Houston rap, it really changed the game. He wasn't your typical Houston rapper either. That was what was cool about Scarface. But yeah, definitely he is a top 15 lyricist without a doubt. Top 20, no brainer, right? But the fact that they excluded him off of this top 50 list is unbelievable, right? So yeah, Scarface was left off the list, and to me that was ridiculous. Another one left off from the West Coast, another one who really helped put West Coast on the map in the early '90s. Too Short. Getting It is one of my favorite Too Short albums. It was supposed to be his retirement album. Of course, he would come back and make his way into Atlanta in the crunk scene and would put out like a resurrection of Too Short during that time period. But yeah, Cocktails, Born to Mac, the classic hit West Coast albums, right? And Too Short definitely deserved his flowers and should have been included on that top 50 list without a doubt. But he was left off as well, right? Another one who had a good 4 or 5 year run was Trick Daddy, and what he did for the MIA and the 305 was he really helped put them on the map. I remember Nan being a song when I was in high school that we would listen to all the time, right? And that's when I started that www.thugs.com album was one that really brought Trick Daddy to my attention, right? And then he would go on to make hits, and he had a good 4 year run where Trick Daddy was on everything, right? But they left him off the list as well. And I thought, looking at that list, you had people like Bad Bunny, you had people like MIA, you had people on there that were definitely didn't deserve it over Trick Daddy without a doubt. So, and last but not least, oh no, two more. I got two more. Sorry. Um, Also, another one that was left off this list, which is these last two that I'm going to talk about. It's an absolute. It makes this list completely irrelevant that these two artists were left off. There was a time period where Atlanta rap was really thriving, right? And Ti had a run, a 6 year run or a 6 album run that was touched, right? He was everywhere. He was at the Grammys. He was doing songs with the biggest artists. He helped elevate trap music. And it would mold into what it is today, right? What you would consider trap music today. But he was the godfather of trap music, especially in Atlanta. And they left him off this top 50 list. Now, there's others that were left off, like Jeezy, and there's so many others that were left off this list. But Ti being left off this list of the 50 greatest rappers, it's disgusting, right? So him being left off along with the last one I'm going to talk about, Ludacris, makes this list completely irrelevant. Luda has stolen the show on every single feature he's ever been on, and let's not even exclude his catalog. This man has went platinum every time out the gate. So leaving Luda and Ti along with Redman, Scarface, Too Short, Trick Daddy, Twista, Game, Ja Rule, and Jada Off makes that top 50 greatest rapper list completely irrelevant. Now, I do feel like they got it right with the number one person. Jay-Z did deserve, because if you're talking about Forbes is a finance magazine, and who better than the richest rapper in the world, right? So why not put him at number one? Makes sense, and I get it. But leaving these 10 artists off, a list of the 50 greatest rappers doesn't make sense to me, right? That's what I got. I'm BJ the DJ. This has been the B-side. Don't forget to rewind. Shaking